Imagine waking up on a perfectly normal morning. You eat breakfast. You hear children playing in the street. Merchants are setting up their stalls. The smell of fresh bread fills the air. By that same evening, you, your family, your city, your entire world, frozen forever. This is not a myth. This is not a legend. This happened. And the evidence is still there today, preserved in ash, exactly as it was the moment everything ended. This is the true story of Pompeii. Hidden Epochs, where forgotten history speaks. In 79 AD, Pompeii was not some small forgotten village. It was a thriving Roman city of nearly 15,000 people, wealthy, vibrant, and full of life. It sat in the shadow of a great mountain called Vesuvius. The Romans knew it was a volcano, but they believed it had been dead for centuries. The rich soil around its base grew the finest grapes in the empire. Vineyards stretched as far as the eye could see. The city had everything: marble temples, public baths, a massive amphitheater that held 20,000 spectators, restaurants, brothels, gambling dens. Political graffiti covered the walls, citizens arguing about elections just like people argue online today. They had no idea what was sleeping beneath their feet, but the mountain had been giving warnings for years. In 62 AD, 17 years before the disaster, a massive earthquake struck the region. Buildings collapsed, streets cracked open. The historian Seneca wrote, "I have just heard that Pompeii has been laid low by an earthquake." The people rebuilt. They assumed it was just an earthquake. They had no concept that earthquakes near a volcano are a warning sign. No one did back then. Then, in the days before August 24th, 79 AD, the earthquakes returned. Small at first, then more frequent. Wells began to dry up. Animals behaved strangely. Birds disappeared from the sky. The citizens were, as one ancient account describes, worried but not frantic. They had lived through earthquakes before. They had no reason to think this time was different. They were catastrophically wrong. August 24th, 79 AD, noon. A sound like nothing anyone had ever heard. Then the peak of Vesuvius exploded, launching a column of ash, rock, and gas 10 miles into the sky. Witnesses described it as looking like an enormous umbrella pine tree rising and spreading across the heavens. Every second, 1.5 million tons of volcanic debris were thrown into the atmosphere. The thermal energy released was more than 100,000 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. For the first 12 hours, ash and pumice rained down on Pompeii like a deadly snowstorm. Stones the size of fists fell from the sky. Roofs began to collapse. People sheltered inside their homes, holding cloth over their faces, waiting for it to stop. Some escaped. Thousands fled the city on foot, carrying whatever they could. Archaeological evidence suggests that roughly 90% of Pompeii's population actually survived. They ran fast enough, but not everyone ran. Some thought their homes would protect them. Some were too old to move. Some refused to leave without their valuables. Some simply couldn't believe it was as serious as it looked. And then, at around 1 in the morning, everything changed. The enormous column of ash, 20 miles high, began to collapse under its own weight. What followed was a pyroclastic surge, a wall of superheated gas, ash, and rock moving at 100 miles per hour. Temperature up to 400 degrees Celsius. It did not burn Pompeii. It did not destroy it slowly. It killed every living person still in the city in a matter of seconds. The heat was so intense and so sudden that muscle tissue contracted violently, freezing bodies in the exact position they were in at the moment of death. A mother curled around her child, a man covering his face with his hands, 2 people embracing, a dog still chained to a post. Then came the ash. Meters of it, covering everything, sealing it. The city of Pompeii did not burn, it did not flood. It did not crumble slowly over centuries. It was simply paused, frozen in a single moment of time, like a photograph taken by a mountain. For 1,500 years, Pompeii was completely forgotten. The ash hardened, grass grew over it, new villages were built on top. People walked above a buried city every day without knowing it existed. Then, in 1599, during the construction of a water channel, workers began finding walls, painted walls, with words on them. They reported it. Officials came. They looked. And then they covered it back up. The content of the paintings was considered too scandalous for the time. Pompeii was sealed again. Proper excavation didn't begin until 1748, and what archaeologists found stunned the entire world. The city was intact, streets, buildings, furniture, food still sitting on tables, jars of wine, loaves of bread in bakery ovens, election posters on the walls, a man's skeleton found with coins clutched in his hand, money he thought he was going to need. And then, the most haunting discovery of all, the people. When the ash buried Pompeii, the bodies of the dead were sealed inside it. Over centuries, the bodies decomposed, but the ash hardened around them perfectly, leaving hollow cavities in the exact shape of each person. In 1863, archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli had a simple idea. He poured liquid plaster into the cavities. What emerged were the people of Pompeii, preserved forever in their final moments. Not as skeletons, not as dust, as people, with expressions, with postures, with the terror and the tenderness and the love of their last seconds on earth still visible. A family huddled together, a man who had covered his face, trying not to breathe the ash, a pregnant woman, a young boy curled on his side as if sleeping. These are not statues, these are real people, people who had names, who had families, who had plans for the next day that they never got to keep. Pompeii was not just a city that vanished, it was 15,000 lives, interrupted and preserved, so that 2,000 years later we could look at them and remember that history is not just events and dates, it is people, just like us. Pompeii is still being excavated today. New discoveries are made every year. In 2023, archaeologists uncovered an entirely new room, still containing its original furniture, untouched for 2,000 years. The mountain is still active. 2 million people live in its shadow today. If you want to know what else history has buried and what secrets are still waiting to be found, subscribe to Hidden Epochs. A new story every week. The past is never as dead as we think.